I never thought my marriage would end at a Christmas dinner party, but then again, I never thought my husband would force me to sit alone at a table surrounded by strangers either. My name is Rebecca, and for 8 years, I believed I was living the life everyone told me I should want. A successful husband, a beautiful home in suburban Connecticut, the kind of marriage that looked perfect in holiday cards. But that Christmas Eve in 2023, sitting at that elaborately decorated table with an empty chair beside me while my husband laughed across the room with his colleagues, I realized I'd been living in a cage made of tinsel and lies. Before I tell you what happened that night, and trust me, you won't believe where this story goes, I want you to do something for me. Comment below and tell me where you're watching from. Because what I'm about to share with you, this story of betrayal and the most unexpected revenge I could have ever imagined, it's real. Every word of it. And if you've ever felt invisible in your own life, if you've ever been made to feel small by someone who promised to love you, you're going to want to hear this. Hit that subscribe button right now, because the stories I share here, they're for people like us. People who've been broken and found a way to rebuild. Check the description box for more stories that will make you feel less alone. Now, let me take you back to the beginning, because you need to understand how I became the woman who would sit alone at that Christmas table. I met Marcus Whitmore when I was 29. He was 35, a rising star at a prestigious investment firm in Manhattan, and I was working as an event coordinator for a non-profit. We met at a charity gala I'd organized, and he swept me off my feet with the kind of confidence that I mistook for strength. He wore expensive suits that fit perfectly, spoke about wine and art with casual authority, and when he looked at me, I felt seen in a way I'd never experienced before. Or at least, that's what I told myself. We married within a year. My mother cried happy tears at the wedding, relieved that her daughter had finally settled down with a successful man. My friends whispered enviously about my ring, a 2-carat diamond that caught the light in all the right ways. I quit my job 6 months later when Marcus suggested that his career was demanding enough for both of us, and that I could focus on making our home beautiful, planning our social calendar, being the kind of wife that would help him climb even higher. I should have seen it then. The way he framed it as a gift when it was really about control. But I was so desperate to be chosen, to be wanted, that I convinced myself this was love. The first few years weren't terrible. They were just hollow. Marcus worked constantly, coming home after 9 most nights, distracted and distant even when he was physically present. Our conversations became transactional. Did you schedule the dinner with the Hendersons? Did you pick up my dry cleaning? We need to go to the company Christmas party. I became less of a wife and more of an executive assistant, except I wasn't getting paid and I had to sleep with my boss. I tried to talk to him about it once, about 2 years into our marriage. I'd made his favorite meal, Chilean sea bass with roasted vegetables, and I'd put on the black dress he'd complimented when we were dating. I waited for him to notice, to see me the way he used to, but he barely looked up from his phone through dinner. Marcus, I said, my voice small, do you think we could talk? About what? He was still scrolling. About us. About. I don't know, I just feel like we don't really connect anymore. He finally looked up, and I saw something in his eyes that made my stomach drop. Annoyance. Like I was a problem he had to solve rather than the woman he'd promised to love forever. Rebecca, I'm exhausted. I've had a 15-hour day. Can we not do this right now? That became his response to everything. Not now. I'm tired. You're being dramatic. Until eventually, I stopped trying. I stopped wearing the black dress. I stopped cooking elaborate meals. I stopped expecting anything at all. But I stayed. Because leaving felt impossible. Because I'd given up my career, my independence, my sense of self. Because everyone still looked at us and saw a perfect couple. Because admitting failure felt worse than enduring unhappiness. By the time that Christmas Eve arrived, we'd become strangers living in the same house. We had separate bedrooms, though we never told anyone. We maintained the facade at social events, standing close enough to seem together, far enough apart that we never actually touched. And Marcus had become someone I barely recognized, colder, more dismissive, treating me with a casual cruelty that felt calculated to hurt without leaving visible marks. The Christmas party was being hosted by the Ashfords, one of the senior partners at Marcus's firm, and his wife, Catherine. They lived in a massive colonial in Greenwich, the kind of house that looked like it belonged on a postcard. Every year, they threw an elaborate Christmas Eve dinner for the firm's most important players and their families. It was the kind of event where careers were made or broken based on how well you performed, how charming you were, how perfectly you fit the image of success. Marcus had been obsessing over it for weeks. He'd bought a new Tom Ford suit. He'd reminded me at least a dozen times to wear something appropriate, to be engaging but not too much, to make him look good. I'd stopped being Rebecca years ago. Now I was just an accessory, like his watch or his cufflinks, meant to signal his status. I'd chosen a dark green velvet dress, elegant and understated. I'd had my hair blown out at the salon, my makeup professionally done. I looked beautiful, objectively. But Marcus barely glanced at me when I came downstairs that evening. "Ready?" he asked, keys already in his hand. "Do I look okay?" I hated how needy I sounded, still seeking his approval after all this time. He gave me a quick once-over. "You look fine. Let's go." Fine. Not beautiful. Not stunning. Fine. The drive to Greenwich was silent except for the Christmas music on the radio, cheerful songs about love and family that felt like mockery. Marcus's jaw was tight, his hands gripping the steering wheel in a way that told me he was stressed. I'd learned to read these signs over the years, to gauge his mood and adjust accordingly, making myself smaller and quieter when he was on edge. "Listen," he said as we pulled into the Ashford's circular driveway, between a Mercedes and a Bentley. "I need you to be on tonight. Philip Ashford is deciding who gets the Hong Kong position, and I need to make the right impression." "Of course," I said automatically. "I'll do my best." He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw something in his expression that I couldn't quite read. Something like contempt mixed with calculation. "Actually," he said slowly, "I think it might be better if we don't arrive together." My heart stuttered. "What do you mean?" "I mean I need to work the room tonight, network strategically. And it'll be easier if I'm not." He trailed off, but the implication was clear. If I'm not dragging you around with me, if I'm not reminded every second that I'm married to someone as ordinary as you, so what am I supposed to do? I asked, hating how my voice shook. "Just mingle. You'll be fine." He was already getting out of the car, straightening his tie, transforming into the Marcus Whitmore everyone else saw, confident, charismatic, successful. I sat there for a moment after he walked away, my hands trembling in my lap. I wanted to drive away, to refuse to play this role anymore. But I didn't have anywhere to go. I didn't have my own money, my own life, my own identity separate from being Marcus's wife. So I took a deep breath, fixed my lipstick in the mirror, and followed him inside. The Ashford home was like something out of a magazine, a massive Christmas tree in the foyer dripping with expensive ornaments, garlands wound around the banisters, candlelight everywhere creating an amber glow. There were about 50 people there, all dressed impeccably, all laughing and drinking champagne and performing the elaborate dance of corporate socializing. Marcus had already disappeared into the crowd. I saw him across the room, shaking hands with Philip Ashford, his laugh carrying over the conversation, bright and false. He didn't look back at me once. I grabbed a glass of champagne from a passing waiter and tried to look comfortable, like I belonged here, like I wasn't completely alone despite being surrounded by people. A few of the other wives smiled at me politely before turning back to their own conversations. No one invited me to join them. And then Catherine Ashford announced that dinner was served. The dining room was spectacular, a long mahogany table set for 50 with china and crystal that probably cost more than my first car. There were place cards at each setting, names written in elegant calligraphy. I found mine near the middle of the table, and my stomach sank when I realized Marcus's card was nowhere near me. He was at the far end, seated between Philip Ashford and Jennifer Chen, the firm's most successful female partner. The most important seats at the table. And I was relegated to the middle, surrounded by people I'd never met, people who didn't even glance at me as they found their own seats. But that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was the empty chair beside me. Everyone else at the table was paired up, couples sitting together, or at least colleagues who knew each other. But the seat next to mine remained empty as everyone settled in, serving themselves from the elaborate platters being passed around. I pretended not to notice, pretended the emptiness beside me wasn't a physical representation of how alone I felt. I looked down the table toward Marcus. He was leaning close to Jennifer Chen, laughing at something she'd said, his hand resting casually on the back of her chair. He looked happy, more alive than I'd seen him in years. And he didn't look at me once. I've never felt more invisible than I did at that table, surrounded by laughter and conversation that flowed around me like I was a stone in a river, an obstacle to be navigated around rather than engaged with. The woman across from me, blonde and expensively maintained, was discussing her daughter's acceptance to Princeton with a man who I assumed was her husband. The couple to my left were debating the merits of various ski resorts in Switzerland. Everyone was part of a conversation, part of a unit, part of something. Everyone except me. I pushed food around my plate, some kind of herb-crusted lamb that probably cost a fortune and tasted like nothing to me. My champagne glass was empty, and I considered getting more just to have something to do with my hands, but the waiters seemed to flow around me too, as if my invisibility extended to them as well. This is what it feels like to disappear, I thought. To be so thoroughly erased that you can sit in a room full of people and not exist at all. I glanced at Marcus again. He was animated now, gesturing as he told some story that had Philip Ashford nodding approvingly. Jennifer Chen was watching him with what looked like admiration, maybe even attraction. And Marcus was eating it up, basking in the attention, in the validation that he never seemed to get from me anymore. Or maybe he'd stopped wanting it from me years ago. Maybe he'd stopped seeing me as a person at all, and had started seeing me as dead weight, something holding him back from the life he really wanted. The thought hit me like ice water, sharp and clarifying. Because looking at him now, seeing how easily he existed without me, how much lighter he seemed when I wasn't beside him, I realized something I'd been avoiding for years. Marcus didn't love me anymore. Maybe he never really had. Maybe I'd been a stepping stone, a box to check on his way to the life he was building, and now that I'd served my purpose, I was just an inconvenience. If you've ever had that moment of clarity, where you suddenly see your entire life from the outside and realize you've been living in a delusion, you know how it feels. Like the ground falling away beneath you. Like everything you thought was solid was actually made of paper and smoke. I was 37 years old. I'd given up my career, my independence, 8 years of my life to a man who couldn't even sit next to me at a Christmas dinner. My eyes were starting to burn with tears I refused to let fall, not here, not in front of these people, when I heard a voice beside me. "Excuse me, is this seat taken?" I looked up, startled. A man was standing beside the empty chair, tall and dark-haired with kind eyes and a slight smile. He was younger than most of the people here, maybe mid-30s, wearing a well-tailored but not ostentatious suit. He had the look of someone who was successful but hadn't let it make him cruel. I glanced at the place card that had been beside mine. It read Daniel Morrison, Morrison and Associates. A business associate of the firm, I assumed, though I'd never heard Marcus mention the name. "I think it's for someone named Daniel Morrison." His smile widened. "That's me. May I?" "Of course," I said, trying to compose myself, to hide the fact that I'd been seconds away from breaking down. He sat down smoothly, immediately turning to face me with the kind of attention that felt foreign after years of being ignored. "I'm Daniel. And you are?" "Rebecca Whitmore." Something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, maybe? But it was gone so quickly I thought I'd imagined it. "It's nice to meet you, Rebecca. I have to say, you have excellent taste in looking miserable at corporate dinner parties. I was thinking of leaving until I saw you sitting here with the same expression I probably have." The observation was so unexpected that I actually laughed, a small sound of surprise. "That obvious?" "Only to someone else who's equally miserable," he said conspiratorially. "These events are torture, aren't they? All performance, no authenticity. Everyone pretending to enjoy conversations about market volatility and vacation homes. You're not a fan of discussing Swiss ski resorts?" I asked, warming to him despite myself. Only if I can also discuss the existential dread of late-stage capitalism and how events like this are a microcosm of everything wrong with wealth inequality. I laughed again, louder this time, and felt some of the tension in my chest ease. When was the last time someone had made me laugh? I don't think that's the kind of conversation that goes over well at these parties, I said. No, which is why I usually stand in corners looking intimidating and leave early. But then I saw you sitting here alone, and I thought, now there's someone who might actually be interesting to talk to. There was nothing flirtatious in his tone, nothing inappropriate. Just genuine friendliness, the kind of human connection I'd been starved for without even realizing it. Well, I appreciate you rescuing me from eating lamb in complete silence, I said. Anytime. He paused, then asked casually, so are you here with someone? Or did you also get voluntold to attend by your company? The question was innocent, but it landed like a stone in my chest. I glanced down the table at Marcus, still engrossed in conversation with Jennifer Chen. I'm here with my husband, I said quietly. He's down there. Daniel followed my gaze, and I saw something shift in his expression. Understanding, maybe even sympathy. Ah, he said simply. Then, after a moment, and yet you're sitting here alone. It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. He needed to network tonight. Big promotion on the line. I'd just be in the way. The words sounded hollow even to me, like an excuse I'd been trained to give for unacceptable behavior. Daniel was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke again, his voice was lower, more serious. Rebecca, I don't mean to overstep, but can I tell you something? Sure, I said, uncertain where this was going. In my experience, men who leave their wives sitting alone at parties aren't networking. They are sending a message about what they value and what they don't. The observation was so accurate, so precisely what I'd been trying not to acknowledge, that I felt tears spring to my eyes again. I blinked them back furiously. I'm sorry, Daniel said quickly. That was out of line. I don't know you or your situation. No, I said, my voice tight. No, you're right. You're absolutely right. We sat in silence for a moment while I fought to regain my composure. Around us, the party continued, oblivious to the small crisis happening in the middle of the table. Look, Daniel said finally, I know we just met, and this is going to sound strange, but would you like to just talk? Like real people? I promise I'm not hitting on you or trying to be inappropriate. I just think we could both use some actual human conversation. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw only sincerity. No ulterior motive, no calculation. Just kindness. I'd like that, I said softly. And so we talked. For the next hour, through multiple courses and increasingly elaborate desserts, Daniel and I had the kind of conversation I hadn't had in years. We talked about everything, books we'd read, places we'd traveled, the small disappointments and unexpected joys of everyday life. He told me about his work. He ran a consulting firm that helped non-profits with strategic planning, which explained the kindness in his eyes. He actually cared about making the world better, not just making money. I told him about my old job at the non-profit, about how much I'd loved event planning, creating experiences that brought people together for good causes. Talking about it made me realize how much I'd lost when I gave it up, how much of myself I'd sacrificed. You should go back to it, Daniel said. You clearly loved it. I can't, I said automatically. I mean, it's been too long. I don't have connections anymore, and Marcus wouldn't. I stopped myself, realizing what I'd been about to say. Marcus wouldn't want me to. Marcus wouldn't what? Daniel asked gently. I shook my head. Nothing. It's complicated. It always is, he said. Then, but you know what I've learned? The things we think are complicated are usually just things we're afraid to simplify. Sometimes the answer is a lot clearer than we want to admit. Before I could respond, I heard Marcus's laugh again from the other end of the table. It was loud and performative, designed to draw attention. I looked over and saw him stand up, slightly unsteady from too much wine, his hand on Jennifer Chen's shoulder as he whispered something in her ear that made her smile. The sight should have made me jealous, but instead I just felt tired. So incredibly tired of caring about someone who clearly didn't care about me. "Rebecca," Daniel said quietly, and something in his tone made me look at him. His expression was serious now, all the warmth replaced with something that looked like concern, or maybe determination. "I need to tell you something." "Okay," I said, uncertain. He leaned closer, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "I didn't come here tonight by accident. And this seat next to you, it wasn't random." My heart started beating faster. "What do you mean?" "I mean I knew you'd be here. I knew your husband would leave you alone. And I came specifically to talk to you." The room suddenly felt too hot, too bright. "I don't understand." "You know Jennifer Chen?" he asked. "The woman your husband is flirting with?" "I know who she is. She's my sister." The words hung in the air between us, reshaping everything that had happened in the last hour. "Your sister," I repeated numbly. "My sister," he confirmed. "And 3 months ago, she came to me crying because she'd gotten involved with a married man at her firm. A man who promised her he was going to leave his wife, that his marriage was over in everything but name. A man who was using her to climb the corporate ladder while keeping his respectable marriage intact." I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. "Marcus." "Marcus," Daniel said quietly. "I'm sorry, Rebecca. I'm so sorry. But I thought you deserved to know." The dining room seemed to tilt sideways. Everything, the candlelight, the laughter, the clinking of crystal glasses, became distorted, like I was watching it all through water. "You're lying," I whispered, but even as I said it, I knew he wasn't. Daniel's face was etched with sympathy and something else, anger, but not directed at me. "I wish I was. But I've watched my sister fall apart over this man for 3 months. She thinks he's going to choose her. He's told her the marriage is dead, that you're just roommates, that he's waiting for the right time to end it." Every word was a knife, precise and devastating. Because I could hear Marcus saying these things. I could picture him spinning our relationship into a tragedy where he was the victim, trapped with a wife who didn't understand him, waiting for the courage to leave. Never mind that he'd engineered my dependence on him. Never mind that he'd systematically dismantled my career, my confidence, my sense of self until I had nothing left but him. "Why are you telling me this?" My voice sounded strange, disconnected from my body. "Because Jennifer doesn't know I'm here tonight. She thinks I'm out of town for work. And when she called me last week, crying again because Marcus had cancelled plans with her to attend this party with his wife, I realized something. He's never going to leave you. He's using her for career advancement. She's brilliant and well-connected, and being close to her helps him. And he's keeping you as a safety net, someone to play the devoted wife when it suits him. So what? You're here to, what? Save me. Rescue the poor, pathetic wife." The bitterness in my voice was sharp enough to cut, but Daniel didn't flinch. "No. I'm here because I think you deserve to know the truth. What you do with that information is entirely up to you." I looked down at my plate, at the remnants of a meal I couldn't remember eating. My hands were shaking. "Does she know you're telling me?" "No. And she'll be furious when she finds out. But I can't watch her throw away her career and her self-respect for a man who's using her. And I can't watch him destroy you in the process." "You don't even know me," I said. "No," he agreed. "But I've spent the last hour talking to you, and I can see who you are. Someone smart and kind and funny, someone who used to have dreams before they got beaten out of you. Someone who deserves so much better than this." I wanted to argue, to defend Marcus, to defend my marriage. But what defense was there? That he humiliated me at parties? That we hadn't had a real conversation in years? That I couldn't remember the last time he'd touched me with anything resembling affection? "How do I know you're telling the truth?" I asked, grasping at straws. Maybe you're just trying to cause problems. Daniel pulled out his phone. I really hoped I wouldn't have to show you this. But if you need proof. He opened his messages and scrolled to a conversation with someone named Jen. Then he handed me the phone. The messages were from 2 weeks ago. Jennifer had sent him a long paragraph about how she thought Marcus might finally be ready to leave his wife, how he'd hinted at it during dinner, how she was so in love with him she couldn't think straight. Daniel's response had been gentle but firm. Jen, please think about what you're doing. He's been saying this for months and nothing has changed. You deserve someone who chooses you without hesitation. Her reply, you don't understand. His wife doesn't even love him anymore. He said she's cold and distant and they barely speak. He's only staying because he doesn't want to hurt her financially. He's actually being noble. I felt something break inside my chest, something that had been cracked for years finally shattering completely. Cold and distant. Like I was the problem. Like I was the reason our marriage had failed. I need to get some air, I said, standing abruptly. The room spun, and Daniel stood too, steadying me with a hand on my elbow. I'll come with you. No, Rebecca. His voice was firm now. You're in shock. Let me at least make sure you don't collapse in the Ashfords' garden. I was too numb to argue. I let him guide me through the dining room, past the clusters of people drinking coffee and liqueurs in the adjoining rooms, out through French doors onto a stone terrace. The December air was brutally cold, but I welcomed it, needed it to cut through the fog in my head. I walked to the edge of the terrace and gripped the stone railing, my breath coming in visible puffs. Behind me, I heard Daniel's footsteps, then felt his suit jacket draped over my shoulders. How long have you known? I asked, staring out at the Ashfords' dark, manicured lawn. About the affair. 3 months, like I said. But I've known about Marcus for longer. I turned to face him. What does that mean? Daniel hesitated, and I could see him weighing how much to tell me. Jennifer has worked at the firm for 5 years. I've heard about Marcus Whitmore for most of that time. His reputation for being ambitious and ruthless, for stepping on whoever he needs to climb higher. The way he treats junior associates, especially women. The way he takes credit for other people's work. And you thought, what? That you'd come here and expose him. I thought I'd come here and give you information you might not have. Because I did some research, Rebecca. I know you don't have your own money. I know you gave up your career. I know you're financially dependent on him. And I thought if you knew the truth about what he was doing, you might be able to protect yourself. To make a plan before things got worse. Worse. I laughed, a harsh sound. How could it possibly get worse? He could leave you with nothing. Or he could keep you trapped in this marriage forever, using you when it suits him and humiliating you when it doesn't. Men like Marcus, they don't change. They just get bolder. I closed my eyes, feeling tears finally spill over. I don't know what to do. You don't have to know right now. But Rebecca, please hear me when I say this. You have options. You have power, even if it doesn't feel like it right now. And you deserve to be more than his prop, his safety net, his excuse. We stood there in silence for a long moment. Inside, I could hear the party continuing, the sounds of laughter and music drifting through the night air. My old life, the one where I pretended everything was fine, was in there somewhere. But standing out here in the cold, with Daniel's jacket around my shoulders and the truth burning in my chest, I felt something shift. I wasn't just hurt anymore. I was angry. I need you to do something for me, I said suddenly. Anything. I need you to go back inside and act like we just had a pleasant conversation at dinner. Act like nothing happened. Can you do that? He studied my face. What are you planning? I don't know yet. But I need time to think, and I can't do that if Marcus suspects something is wrong. So please, just act normal. Make small talk. Laugh at jokes. Whatever you would do at a party like this. Okay, Daniel said slowly. But Rebecca, if you need help. I have your number, I said, patting the phone he'd handed me earlier. I took a picture of your contact information before I gave it back. A small smile crossed his face. Smart. I used to be, I said. Before I forgot who I was. We went back inside, and Daniel was true to his word. He moved through the party with easy charm, shaking hands and making conversation. No one would have guessed we'd just had a conversation that had detonated my entire world. I found Marcus in the study, drinking scotch with Philip Ashford and 2 other senior partners. He barely glanced at me when I appeared in the doorway. Ready to go? I asked, keeping my voice neutral, pleasant. He looked irritated at the interruption. I'm in the middle of something, Rebecca. I know, I just thought. Can you get a car service? I'm going to be here a while longer. Something in his tone, the casual dismissal, the assumption that I would just quietly disappear while he continued his performance, made the anger in my chest flare hotter. But I smiled. Of course. I'll see you at home. Sure, he said, already turning back to his conversation. I called for a car and waited in the foyer, watching through the doorway as the party continued. I saw Jennifer Chen laughing with a group of colleagues, beautiful and accomplished and completely unaware that her brother had just blown up both our lives. I saw Marcus holding court in the study, gesturing expansively, his face flushed with alcohol and success. And I saw Daniel, standing near the Christmas tree, watching me with something that looked like concern and hope. When my car arrived, I left without saying goodbye to anyone. The drive back to our house in Connecticut was 45 minutes, and I spent every one of them thinking about the last 8 years. About every small humiliation, every casual cruelty, every moment I'd swallowed my feelings and made myself smaller to accommodate Marcus's ego. By the time we pulled into our driveway, I'd made a decision. I wasn't going to confront him. I wasn't going to cry or plead or try to fix our marriage. I wasn't going to make a scene or demand explanations. I was going to plan. Because Daniel was right about one thing, I had power. Maybe not financial power, not yet. But I had information. I had time. And I had something Marcus had underestimated for years. I had intelligence and determination, and 8 years of pent-up rage that was finally finding direction. If Marcus wanted to play games, if he wanted to use people and discard them, if he thought he could keep me trapped in a marriage that served his purposes while he pursued his affair, then fine. 2 could play at that game. And I was going to play to win. If you're still with me, if this story is resonating with something in your own life, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Because what comes next, the revenge I took and the way everything unraveled, it's going to be a lesson in what happens when you underestimate someone you've broken. Check the description box for more stories about people who refused to stay down. The house was dark when I got home. Empty. Cold. Everything I'd spent years trying to make warm and welcoming suddenly felt like a mausoleum, a monument to a marriage that had died years ago without anyone bothering to bury it. I didn't turn on the lights. I went straight to Marcus's study. This was his private domain, the room where he worked from home, where he took calls he didn't want me to overhear, where he kept his files and his laptop and all the pieces of his carefully constructed life. He'd told me more than once not to bother him when he was in here, to respect his space, his privacy. But privacy is a two-way street, and Marcus had forfeited his claim to it the moment he started lying to me. His laptop was locked, but I knew the password. He'd used the same one for years, his mother's maiden name and his birthday. Not particularly creative, but Marcus had never expected anyone to challenge him, so why bother with real security? I opened the laptop and started searching. I won't bore you with the technical details, but over the next 3 hours, I systematically went through everything. Emails, text messages, bank statements, credit card records. I took screenshots of everything relevant, emailing them to an account I'd created specifically for this purpose, one Marcus didn't know existed. What I found was worse than I'd imagined. The affair with Jennifer Chen wasn't his first. There were text exchanges with at least 2 other women over the past 3 years, both junior associates at his firm. Nothing explicitly sexual, but the tone was clear: flirtation, innuendo, promises of dinners and weekend trips that I knew nothing about. He'd been using our joint credit card to pay for these dinners, these trips, these little tokens of affection for other women, while telling me we needed to be careful with money, that we couldn't afford for me to go back to work part-time because childcare would cost too much. We didn't have children. I'd wanted them, years ago, but Marcus kept saying the timing wasn't right. Now I understood he'd never wanted them at all, just another way to keep me dependent and occupied. But the really damning information was in his work emails. Marcus had been systematically taking credit for other people's work for years. There were email chains where junior associates, mostly women, would send him detailed analysis and recommendations, and he would forward them to senior partners with minimal changes, presenting them as his own insights. There were messages where he undermined colleagues to make himself look better, spreading rumors about people's competence or work ethic. And there were emails between him and Philip Ashford about the Hong Kong position. Emails that made it clear Marcus had been positioning himself for this promotion for over a year, that he'd been manipulating people and situations to ensure he got it. That Jennifer Chen was part of that strategy. Getting close to her gave him access to her network and her insights, which he was also taking credit for. He was using everyone. Me, Jennifer, his colleagues, his subordinates. We were all just tools to him, means to an end, disposable once we'd served our purpose. I sat back in his expensive leather chair, my hands shaking with fury, and felt something crystallize inside me. He thought I was weak. He thought I was broken. He thought I would just accept this, that I'd be too afraid or too dependent to fight back. He was wrong. I was going to be methodical about this. Patient. I was going to take everything from him the same way he'd taken everything from me, slowly, carefully, so completely that by the time he realized what was happening, it would be too late to stop it. I printed out the most damaging emails and documents, hiding the physical copies in a place Marcus would never look, inside a box of tampons in the back of the bathroom cabinet. Then I cleared the printer history and logged out of everything, leaving no trace that I'd been snooping. It was almost 3 a.m. when I finally went to bed. My bed, in the room I'd been sleeping in alone for the past year. Marcus still wasn't home, probably still at the Ashfords, still networking, still performing. Still with Jennifer, maybe. I should have cried. Should have felt devastated, heartbroken, lost. Instead, I felt clear, focused, alive in a way I hadn't felt in years. The next morning was Christmas Day. Marcus stumbled in around 9, reeking of scotch and cologne that wasn't his. I was in the kitchen, making coffee, wearing my robe, playing the role of wife. "Morning," he mumbled, heading straight for the aspirin. "Morning. Rough night." "Productive night," he corrected, swallowing pills dry. "I think I really made an impression on Philip. The Hong Kong position is basically mine." "That's wonderful," I said, handing him coffee. "Congratulations." He looked at me with something like surprise, as if he'd expected me to be angry about being abandoned last night. When I just smiled pleasantly, he seemed to relax. "Thanks. Listen, I know last night was. I know I left you on your own for a while. But you understand, right? This promotion, it's important for our future." Our future. The lie was so blatant, so insulting, that I had to turn away to hide my expression. "Of course I understand," I said. "You do what you need to do. I knew you'd get it." He gulped his coffee and headed for the stairs. "I'm going to shower and sleep for a few hours. We're still doing dinner at your mother's tonight, right?" My mother's house. The traditional Christmas dinner I'd organized, the one I'd been planning for weeks, the one he'd forgotten about entirely. "Yes," I said. 6 o'clock. "Right. Wake me at 5. He disappeared upstairs, and I stood alone in our pristine kitchen, listening to the water run in the master bathroom, thinking about how many times I'd made excuses for him to my family, how many times I'd covered for his absence or his rudeness or his complete lack of interest in anyone but himself. That ended today. I spent Christmas afternoon at my mother's house helping her prepare dinner while Marcus slept off his hangover. My mother, Sandra, was 68 and still sharp as a tack, running her household with the same efficiency she'd used raising 3 kids on a teacher's salary after my father left. "You look tired, honey," she said as we worked on the sweet potatoes together. "Is everything okay?" "Everything's fine," I lied automatically. Then I stopped myself. "Actually, Mom, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "When Dad left, how did you know? I mean, before he actually left, did you know something was wrong?" My mother's hands stilled on the potato peeler. She was quiet for a long moment, and when she spoke, her voice was gentle but firm. "I knew for about 2 years before he finally walked out. I could feel it, the distance, the excuses, the way he was always somewhere else even when he was standing right in front of me." "Why did you stay those 2 years?" She looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw understanding in her eyes. "Because I had 3 kids and no career and I was terrified. So I spent those 2 years getting ready. I got my teaching certificate. I squirreled away money. I talked to a lawyer. So when he finally left, I wasn't helpless. I was prepared." "You never told me that. You were only 15 when he left. I didn't want you to know how scared I was, how hard I'd had to work to protect us." She put down the peeler and took my hands. "Rebecca, why are you asking me this?" I wanted to tell her everything. But I wasn't ready yet, not when I didn't know what I was going to do, not when saying it out loud would make it real in a way I wasn't prepared for. "Just curious," I said. "Thinking about the past." She didn't believe me. I could see it in her face, but she didn't push. "Well, if you ever need to talk about anything, anything at all, I'm here. You know that, right?" "I know, Mom. Thank you." Marcus showed up at 6:30, late as always, barely apologizing as he kissed my mother's cheek and shook my brother's hand. He was charming through dinner, telling stories about work, making everyone laugh, playing the role of successful son-in-law. I watched him perform and thought about all the other performances he gave, all the other roles he played. Devoted husband. Ethical businessman. Good guy who was just trying to do his best. All lies. All carefully constructed facades designed to get him what he wanted. My brother, Tom, pulled me aside while we were clearing dishes. "You okay, Beck? You seem off." "Just tired," I said. "It's been a long holiday season." "Marcus seems to be in a good mood though. Things better between you two." I looked through the doorway at Marcus, sprawled on my mother's couch with a glass of wine, talking to my nephew about football. He looked relaxed. Happy. Completely unburdened by guilt or conscience. "Things are fine," I told Tom. The week between Christmas and New Year's was strange. Marcus was home more than usual, the firm was closed, and even the most dedicated workaholics took a few days off. We moved around each other like roommates, polite and distant, but I played my part. I asked about his day, made his favorite meals, smiled when appropriate. I was gathering intelligence. I learned that he talked to Jennifer every day, usually late at night when he thought I was asleep. I learned that the Hong Kong position came with a 3-year contract and a significant raise. I learned that he was planning to tell me about it in January, framing it as an amazing opportunity for us, a fresh start in a new city. What he didn't know, what he couldn't know, was that I had no intention of going to Hong Kong with him. I spent my days researching. Divorce lawyers. Employment attorneys. Financial advisors who specialized in helping women who'd been out of the workforce. I used the computer at the local library so there'd be no trace of my searches on our home computers. And I called Daniel Morrison. "I was hoping you'd reach out," he said when he picked up. "How are you doing?" "I need help," I said simply. "I need to know my options." "I can connect you with my lawyer," he offered immediately. "She specializes in cases like yours, women who've been financially controlled, who need to protect themselves before filing for divorce." "Won't that be expensive?" "Let me worry about that." Consider it my apology for having to be the one to tell you the truth. You don't owe me anything. Maybe not. But I'd like to help anyway. If you'll let me. I met with the lawyer, Patricia Brennan, 3 days after Christmas. Her office was in Manhattan, tucked away in a building I could reach without anyone I knew seeing me. She was in her 50s, stylish and no-nonsense, with the kind of direct gaze that suggested she'd seen every trick in the book. "Daniel's told me about your situation," she said after we'd settled into her office. "Before we go any further, I want you to understand something. What I'm about to help you do, it's legal, it's ethical, but it's going to feel ruthless. Because we're going to take every advantage of every mistake your husband has made. We're going to protect you financially, legally, and emotionally. And we're not going to give him any warning. Can you do that?" "Yes," I said without hesitation. "Good. Then let's talk about what you found and what we can do with it." I showed her everything, the screenshots, the printed emails, the evidence of affairs and financial manipulation and professional misconduct. She went through it all methodically, her expression never changing, making notes in precise handwriting. "This is very good work," she said finally. "Very thorough. The affairs alone would be enough in Connecticut. We're not a no-fault state, so adultery matters. But the financial evidence, the way he's controlled your access to money while spending freely on his affairs, that's going to matter even more. And the professional misconduct. Can that help me?" "Potentially. If his firm found out about the way he's been taking credit for other people's work, manipulating colleagues, they might terminate him. Which would impact his ability to pay alimony and his earning potential, which courts consider in divorce proceedings. So what do we do? First, we protect you. We're going to open accounts in your name only. We're going to document every asset you have together: house, cars, investments, retirement accounts. We're going to make sure that if he tries to hide money or assets, we have a record of what existed before the divorce was filed." "He's about to get a promotion," I said. "A big one. To Hong Kong." Patricia looked up sharply. "When?" "He'll probably get official word in the next few weeks. I don't know exactly when." "That's good information. If he gets the promotion and raise before we file, that higher salary becomes the baseline for alimony calculations. If he tries to delay the promotion or hide it, that's fraud, and we can prove it. So we wait for the promotion." "We wait for the right moment," she corrected. "The moment that gives us maximum leverage and gives him minimum time to prepare. But while we wait, you prepare. You document everything. You protect yourself. You build your case. And when the time comes, you strike fast and hard and leave him no room to maneuver." I felt something fierce and bright kindle in my chest. Hope, maybe. Or just satisfaction at finally taking action instead of passively accepting whatever Marcus decided to do with my life. "I can do that," I said. "I know you can. Daniel told me you used to be an event planner. That takes organization, attention to detail, ability to manage multiple moving parts. You're going to use all those skills now, except instead of planning parties, you're planning your exit strategy." We spent the next 2 hours going over every detail of my situation. By the time I left Patricia's office, I had a plan. It was complex and would require patience, but it was mine. I was in control for the first time in years. On my way home, my phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. "How did it go?" "Good. Thank you for connecting me with her." "Anytime. Hey, I know this is probably the last thing on your mind, but my firm is actually looking for an event coordinator for some non-profit galas we're planning. Part-time, flexible hours. If you're interested, I could send you the details." I stared at the message for a long moment. An opportunity. A way back to the work I'd loved. A path toward independence that didn't rely on Marcus or his money or his permission. "I'm interested," I typed back. "Great. I'll send the info. And Rebecca, I know this is hard, but you're doing the right thing. You're going to be okay." I wanted to believe him. And for the first time in a long time, I thought maybe I could. That night, Marcus came home late again, though he mumbled something about dinner with colleagues. He smelled like perfume, Jennifer's perfume. I'd learned to recognize it. He didn't bother lying very well anymore, probably because he didn't think he needed to, didn't think I'd ever question him or leave or do anything but continue being his convenient wife. "Good day?" he asked absently, loosening his tie. "Very good," I said truthfully. "Very productive." He didn't ask what I'd been productive at. He never did. To Marcus, my days were empty, meaningless, just time I filled waiting for him to come home and give my life purpose. He had no idea that I'd spent the day laying the groundwork to destroy him. And that ignorance, that absolute certainty that he was untouchable, that I was harmless, that was going to be his downfall. January arrived with brutal cold and crystalline clarity. Marcus was insufferable, energized, ambitious, counting down the days until Philip Ashford would make the official announcement about the Hong Kong position. He'd already started researching luxury apartments in Central, talking about how much cheaper it would be to hire domestic help there, how we could finally live the life we deserved. The "we" was laughable. He meant himself. I was just part of the package, the wife who would smile prettily at corporate events and make his life comfortable while he continued his affair with Jennifer Chen, probably even more brazenly once we were thousands of miles from anyone who knew us. But I played along. I looked at apartment listings when he showed them to me. I nodded when he talked about the amazing restaurants and the expat community and the career opportunities. I let him believe I was excited about this move that I had no intention of making. Meanwhile, I was executing my own plan. Patricia had helped me open a bank account at a different institution, one Marcus had no access to or knowledge of. I'd started funneling small amounts of money into it, nothing large enough to be noticed, just skimming a little from grocery money, from the household account, building a safety net. Patricia said I'd need at least $10,000 to cover initial divorce costs and living expenses. I was halfway there. I'd also started the interview process with Daniel's firm. They needed someone to coordinate a series of fundraising galas for environmental nonprofits, events scattered throughout the year. It was perfect, part-time work that would ease me back into the field, prove I still had marketable skills, provide income that Marcus couldn't control. The first interview was with Daniel and his business partner, a woman named Sarah Chen, no relation to Jennifer, thank God. They were professional and thorough, asking about my experience, my approach to event planning, my availability. "I have to be honest," I said toward the end of the interview. "I haven't worked in 8 years. I'm basically starting over. But I loved this work, and I'm good at it. I just need someone to give me a chance." Sarah exchanged a glance with Daniel, then smiled. "We've looked at the events you coordinated before you left the field. The Riverside Gala? The fundraiser that brought in $2 million for youth literacy? That was you. That was a long time ago." "Talent doesn't expire," Sarah said firmly. "And honestly, someone who's organized a household, managed a social calendar, kept a million details straight for years? That's exactly the kind of organizational skill we need. The job is yours if you want it." I felt tears prick my eyes. When was the last time someone had seen value in me? When was the last time I'd been chosen for something, recognized for my abilities, treated like I mattered? "I want it," I said. "Thank you. Thank you so much." I started work the following week, just a few hours here and there, mostly from home or at coffee shops while Marcus was at the office. He didn't notice. He was too consumed with his own ambitions, too certain of his control over me to pay attention to what I was actually doing. The work was like coming home. I'd forgotten how much I loved the logistics of event planning, the puzzle of venues and vendors and timelines, the satisfaction of creating something beautiful and meaningful. I'd forgotten how good it felt to be competent at something, to be valued, to be part of a team. Daniel kept his distance, always professional, but I could see him watching me sometimes with what looked like pride. He'd given me this opportunity, this lifeline, and I was determined to prove his faith in me wasn't misplaced. But I was also watching him. Because there was something else going on, something I hadn't understood at first. Jennifer had found out that Daniel had talked to me at the Christmas party. She'd confronted him about it, and he'd admitted he'd warned me about the affair. They'd had a massive fight, and she wasn't speaking to him. She thinks I betrayed her, Daniel told me during a meeting in late January. We were supposedly discussing catering options for the spring gala, but the conversation had drifted personal. She's furious. She says Marcus is going to leave his wife soon, that I'm ruining her happiness by interfering. I'm sorry, I said. I didn't mean to cause problems between you. You didn't cause anything. Marcus did. And Jennifer, she's my sister and I love her, but she's making a terrible mistake. I just hope she realizes it before it costs her everything. What if she doesn't? Daniel was quiet for a moment, stirring his coffee absently. Then she'll learn the hard way. Like most of us do. The official announcement came on January 20th. Philip Ashford called a firm-wide meeting to announce that Marcus Whitmore was being promoted to managing director of the Hong Kong office, effective April 1st. It came with a massive raise, a generous relocation package, and a 3-year guaranteed contract. Marcus came home that night with champagne and Thai takeout, more animated than I'd seen him in years. We did it, he crowed, pouring champagne into our expensive crystal flutes. I fucking did it, Beck. Hong Kong. This is everything I've been working for. Congratulations, I said, accepting the glass. You must be thrilled. Thrilled doesn't even cover it. This is going to change everything for us. New city, new life, new opportunities. It's going to be incredible. I noticed he said us and for us, still maintaining the fiction that this was a joint venture, a shared dream. Still lying so casually, so completely. When do we leave? I asked, playing my part. April 1st. So we have about 10 weeks to pack up, sell the house, get everything arranged. I know it's fast, but… Sell the house. That was new information, something he hadn't mentioned before. Well, yeah. No point keeping it if we're going to be in Hong Kong for 3 years minimum. The real estate market is good right now, and the equity will help with the move. Of course. He wanted to liquidate assets, presumably so he could control the money more easily, so I'd be even more dependent on him in a foreign country where I didn't know anyone or have any support system. That makes sense, I said carefully. Have you already talked to a realtor? I'm meeting with one tomorrow. We should be able to list by early February, and hopefully sell before we leave. This was a complication. If the house sold before I filed for divorce, the proceeds would go into our joint accounts, where Marcus could access them. I needed to talk to Patricia. But I smiled and clinked my glass against his. To new beginnings. To new beginnings, he echoed, and downed his champagne. He was in such a good mood that night that he actually stayed home, actually talked to me like I was a person instead of a piece of furniture. We watched a movie, his choice, some violent thriller I had no interest in, and he held my hand on the couch, a gesture so rare and unexpected that it almost broke my heart. Almost. But not quite. Because even this small kindness was calculated. He needed me compliant for the next 10 weeks, needed me excited about Hong Kong, needed me not to question or resist. So he was love-bombing me, giving me just enough attention to keep me hooked, to make me think maybe things could get better, maybe he did still care. It was manipulation, pure and simple. And now that I could see it clearly, it made me furious. After he went to bed, I called Patricia from the driveway, sitting in my car with the heat running. He wants to sell the house, I told her without preamble. Before we leave for Hong Kong in April. Okay, she said calmly. That's not ideal, but it's manageable. Here's what we're going to do. We talked for 45 minutes, adjusting the plan, accounting for this new variable. By the time I hung up, I had a new timeline. I had to file for divorce before the house sold, which meant I had maybe 6 weeks, 8 at the most, to get everything in place. It was time to accelerate. The next few weeks were a careful balancing act. I played the dutiful wife, going to house showings with Marcus and the realtor, a slick woman named Diane who promised she could sell our place for well above asking. I smiled at potential buyers during open houses, answered questions about the neighborhood and the schools, acted like I was sad to leave this house I'd stopped feeling at home in years ago. But I was also working more hours at Daniel's firm, taking on additional responsibilities, proving I was indispensable. I was meeting regularly with Patricia, going over every detail of our financial situation, making sure we had documentation for everything. And I was building my case. I'd started documenting Marcus's absences, his late nights, his suspicious behavior. I had a log of every time he'd come home smelling like perfume, every dinner he'd missed, every lie he'd told about where he'd been. I had receipts from his credit card showing charges at expensive restaurants and hotels on nights he'd told me he was working late. And I'd made a decision about the professional misconduct. I think we should expose what he's been doing at work, I told Patricia during one of our meetings. The way he's been stealing credit, manipulating people. His firm should know. Patricia considered this carefully. It could backfire. If he gets fired, his income drops, which affects your alimony. And he'll know someone tipped them off, which could make him vindictive during the divorce. I know. But Jennifer deserves to know what kind of man she's actually involved with. And his colleagues, the people he's been using, they deserve to know too. This isn't just about me getting what I'm owed financially. This is about justice. Justice and revenge aren't always the same thing, Patricia warned. Maybe not. But in this case, I think they're close enough. She was quiet for a long moment, then nodded. Okay. If you're sure. But we do it strategically. We wait until after you file for divorce, so he can't claim you did it to hurt his career in retaliation. We make it look like it came from someone else, not you. And we make sure the evidence is irrefutable. I have the emails, I said. I have everything we need. Then we'll use them. But timing is everything. We file for divorce, we hit him with the evidence of the affairs, we lock down the assets, and then, once the legal proceedings are underway and he can't claim you're making things up out of spite, we drop the professional misconduct bomb. It was a ruthless plan. Methodical. Designed to destroy Marcus's career, his reputation, his relationship, his sense of security, everything, all at once. I should have felt guilty. Should have felt some reservation about being this calculating, this cold. But I didn't. Because Marcus had been systematically destroying me for years, and he'd done it with a smile on his face, convinced I'd never fight back. He was about to learn differently. By mid-February, we had an offer on the house. A young couple expecting their first baby, willing to pay $50,000 over asking, eager to close quickly. Marcus was ecstatic. He'd already started shopping for furniture for our Hong Kong apartment, talking about the life we'd build there, the success he'd have, the future we'd create together. A future that existed only in his imagination. The closing was scheduled for March 15th. Patricia and I agreed I'd file for divorce on March 10th, 5 days before the house sale went through. That way, the house sale would be frozen as part of the divorce proceedings, the money protected until we'd gone through asset division. Marcus would be blindsided. He'd have no time to hide assets, no warning to prepare a defense. He'd be caught completely off guard, in the middle of preparing for a move that was never going to happen. It was perfect. But there was one more thing I needed to do. One more piece of the puzzle I needed to put in place before I could execute the plan. I needed to confront Jennifer Chen. Not for Marcus. Not even for myself, really. But for her. Because despite everything, despite the fact that she was sleeping with my husband, I couldn't help but feel a strange sort of sympathy for her. She was being used too. Maybe she didn't know it yet, maybe she thought this was love, but she was just another tool in Marcus's arsenal, another stepping stone on his path to success. She deserved to know the truth. And I was going to make sure she heard it. I found Jennifer Chen at a coffee shop in Tribeca on a Saturday morning in late February. I knew she went there. Daniel had mentioned it in passing, not knowing I'd file the information away for later use. She was sitting alone at a corner table, laptop open, looking polished and professional even on the weekend. She was beautiful in that intimidating way some women are, Perfect makeup, expensive clothes, the kind of confidence that comes from genuine competence. I could see why Marcus had been attracted to her, though I suspected her usefulness mattered more to him than her looks. I bought a coffee and walked directly to her table. "Jennifer Chen," I said. She looked up, confused, then recognition dawned. Her face went pale. "You're Rebecca Whitmore." "I am. Can I sit?" "I don't think that's a good idea." "I don't care what you think is a good idea," I said pleasantly, pulling out the chair across from her. "I'm sitting anyway." She glanced around nervously, probably looking for escape routes or witnesses, but the coffee shop was crowded enough that making a scene would be embarrassing for both of us. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice tight. "To talk. To tell you some things you should know about the man you're sleeping with." "Marcus and I are in love," she said defensively, but I heard the uncertainty underneath. "He's going to leave you. He's unhappy in his marriage and—" "Let me guess. He told you I'm cold and distant? That we're roommates, basically? That he's only staying for financial reasons, or because he doesn't want to hurt me?" Her silence was answer enough. "I thought so. Let me tell you what he didn't mention. He told you those exact same things about his last affair. And the one before that." "That's not true." "It is true. I have the emails. The text messages. You're not the first woman he's told he's going to leave me for. You're just the most useful one right now." "You're lying. You're just trying to—" "To what? Save my marriage?" "Jennifer, I don't want my marriage saved. My marriage has been dead for years. I'm here because I think you deserve better than being used by a man who sees people as chess pieces." She stared at me, and I saw something shift in her expression. Doubt, maybe, or recognition of something she'd been trying not to see. "He loves me," she said, but it sounded like she was trying to convince herself. "He loves what you can do for him. Your connections. Your reputation. The way being close to you makes him look good at the firm. Have you noticed how often he takes your ideas and presents them as his own?" Her face went even paler, and I knew I'd hit the mark. "Your brother tried to warn you," I continued gently. "But you didn't want to listen." "I get it." I didn't want to listen either. All those years ago when my friends told me Marcus was controlling, that he was isolating me. We don't want to believe we've made a mistake, especially with someone we've invested ourselves in emotionally. "Daniel had no right to interfere in my relationship," she said, but there was no heat in it. "He had every right. He's your brother, and he loves you. He's watching you throw away your career and your self-respect for a man who's incapable of actually loving anyone but himself. You don't know him like I do." "I know him better than you do," I said quietly. "I've known him for 8 years. I've watched him lie and manipulate and use people without remorse. I've been his wife, his prop, his excuse. And I can tell you with absolute certainty that when you stop being useful to him, when the cost of being with you outweighs the benefits, he will discard you without a second thought." "Why are you telling me this?" she asked, and for the first time, she sounded young. "Vulnerable. Scared. Because in a few weeks, I'm filing for divorce. I'm going to take him for everything I can legally get, and I'm going to expose what he's been doing at your firm, the way he's been stealing credit, manipulating colleagues, building his career on other people's work. And when that happens, he's going to need someone to blame. Someone to paint as the villain so he can play the victim." I leaned forward, holding her gaze. "He's going to blame you, Jennifer. He's going to say you seduced him, that you distracted him, that you're the reason his marriage fell apart and his career imploded. He'll throw you under the bus without hesitation. And your reputation, your career, everything you've built, it'll be collateral damage." She was silent for a long moment, and I could see her processing, weighing, trying to decide if I was telling the truth or just trying to destroy her relationship out of spite. "I have proof," I said finally. "Of all of it. The affairs, the stolen work, the manipulation. And I'll show it to you if you want to see it. Not because I want to hurt you, but because I think you deserve to know who you're actually dealing with. Why would you help me? She asked suspiciously. I'm not helping you. I'm helping me. Because when Marcus's world falls apart, I don't want you running to him, supporting him, giving him a soft place to land. I want him to face the consequences of his actions alone. And you deserve better than being caught in the wreckage. I pulled out my phone and opened the folder of screenshots I'd collected, then handed it to her. This is just a sample. Read it. Think about it. And then decide if the man you think you love actually exists. I stood up, leaving my untouched coffee on the table. For what it's worth, I hope you find someone who actually values you. Someone who doesn't see you as a stepping stone. You seem like a brilliant woman. Don't waste yourself on a man who isn't capable of appreciating what you have to offer. I walked away without looking back, my heart pounding, adrenaline coursing through my veins. I had no idea if she'd actually look at the evidence, if anything I'd said had gotten through. But I'd done what I could. The rest was up to her. That night, Daniel texted me. Jennifer called. She's upset. What happened? I talked to her. Showed her some evidence. She needed to know the truth. There was a long pause, then, that was brave. And probably necessary. She's angry, but I think it's starting to sink in. I'm not trying to destroy her, I typed. I just don't want her caught in the crossfire when this all explodes. I know. Thank you for trying. Even if she doesn't appreciate it now, she will eventually. I hoped he was right. Because in 10 days, I was going to detonate Marcus's entire life, and I wanted to make sure only the person who deserved it got hurt. The first week of March passed in a strange blur of normal routines and secret preparations. I packed boxes for the move that wasn't going to happen, met with the lawyers finalizing the house sale, smiled at Marcus when he talked excitedly about our future in Hong Kong. And I finalized everything with Patricia. We went over the divorce filing one last time, making sure every detail was perfect, every document in order. She'd arranged for Marcus to be served with papers at his office on March 10th, maximum public humiliation. The divorce complaint detailed the affairs with documentation, requested spousal support based on his new salary, and requested an equitable distribution of all marital assets including the house. Once he's served, he'll have 30 days to respond, Patricia explained. But the filing itself will immediately freeze major financial decisions. He won't be able to sell the house without your consent. He won't be able to drain accounts or hide assets. And if he tries, we'll document it and use it against him. What about his job? The Hong Kong position. That's trickier. The firm can't force him to stay in the US if he wants to take the position. But she smiled thinly. Once the information about his professional misconduct becomes public, they may rescind the offer. And even if they don't, his reputation will be damaged enough that the position won't be the career triumph he's imagining. Good, I said fiercely. Are you ready for this? Patricia asked, studying my face. Because once we file, there's no going back. This will get ugly. He will fight back. He'll try to paint you as unstable, vindictive, trying to destroy him. He'll use every weapon he has. I know. And I'm ready. I'm so far past ready. She nodded, satisfied. Then we do this. March 10th fell on a Tuesday. I woke up early, Marcus still asleep beside me in what had become a rare shared morning. We'd been sleeping in the same bed more often lately, part of his campaign to keep me sweet, to make me think things were getting better, that Hong Kong would be a fresh start. I looked at him in the early morning light, his face relaxed in sleep, and felt absolutely nothing. No love, no hate, not even really anger anymore. Just a cold, clear determination to reclaim my life. I got up quietly, showered, dressed in one of my best outfits, a navy blue dress that made me look professional and put together. I was going to Patricia's office this morning to make sure everything was in order before the papers were served. Then I was going to Daniel's office to work on the spring gala, to keep up the appearance of normalcy. And at 2 p.m., A process server would walk into Marcus's office at Ashford and Partners and hand him divorce papers in front of his colleagues. I made coffee and toast, moving through our kitchen for what I knew would be one of the last times. Marcus came downstairs at 7:30, already dressed in one of his expensive suits, checking his phone. "Morning," he said absently. "I've got meetings all day. Don't wait up for dinner. I'll probably be late." "Sure," I said. "I've got some errands to run anyway." He kissed my cheek on his way out, a perfunctory gesture, already mentally at the office. "Love you." He didn't wait for a response. He never did anymore. The door closed behind him, and I stood in the sudden silence of our empty house, holding my coffee cup with shaking hands. This was it. The last morning of my old life. By tonight, everything would be different. I met Patricia at 9. We went through everything one final time: the divorce complaint, the financial affidavits, the evidence of adultery and financial misconduct. Everything was perfect, thorough, airtight. "The process server will deliver the papers at 2 p.m., Patricia confirmed. "He'll do it in Marcus's office if possible, or in a common area if he's in a meeting. Maximum visibility, like you wanted." "Good. And you're sure about the timing? About doing this publicly?" "I'm sure. He's humiliated me publicly for years. He can handle one afternoon of embarrassment." Patricia smiled grimly. "Okay then. Let's burn this bridge." I spent the morning at Daniel's office, trying to focus on catering menus and venue contracts, but my mind kept drifting to what was about to happen. Daniel noticed, of course. "You okay?" he asked during a coffee break. "Today's the day," I said quietly. "He's getting served at 2. Daniel's eyes widened. "Today? That's, wow. Are you ready?" "As ready as I'll ever be." "Do you have somewhere to stay tonight? Because you probably shouldn't go home." "Not right away." I hadn't thought about that, actually. I'd been so focused on the filing itself that I hadn't considered the immediate aftermath. No. I guess I thought I'd just go home and deal with it." "Bad idea," Daniel said firmly. "He's going to be furious and blindsided. You don't want to be alone with him when he first gets those papers. Stay with family, or a friend, or," he hesitated, "I have a guest room. It's yours if you need it." "Daniel, I can't ask you to." "You're not asking. I'm offering. And before you say it's inappropriate or whatever, Sarah will be there too. She and her husband are staying with me while their place is being renovated. So it's not just us. It's completely proper. And you'll be safe." The word safe hit me harder than I expected. Because I had unconsciously thought I was unsafe with Marcus, but hearing Daniel say it made me realize that I'd been low-level afraid for a while now. Afraid of Marcus's anger, his unpredictability, what he might do if he felt cornered. "Okay," I said. "Thank you. If the offer's genuine, I'll take you up on it." "It's genuine. Pack a bag before 2. Bring anything you can't replace, documents, photos, jewelry, anything he might destroy out of spite. And be ready to leave right after he gets served." At 1:30, I went home. The house was empty, quiet, full of 8 years of memories that mostly hurt. I moved through it quickly, efficiently, packing a suitcase with clothes and essentials. I took my grandmother's jewelry from my dresser, the photos from my childhood, my laptop with all my work files. I took my birth certificate and social security card from the safe, my passport, anything important. And I took one last thing, the wedding photo that sat on our mantel. Not because I wanted to keep it, but because I didn't want Marcus to have it, to be able to pretend we'd ever been happy. I was loading my car when my phone rang. "Patricia." "It's done," she said. "He's been served." The process server said he went white, then red, then asked everyone to leave his office. He's apparently still in there now with the door locked. I sat down hard on my suitcase, suddenly dizzy. Okay, it's done." "It's done," Patricia confirmed. You did it, Rebecca. You took the first step. How are you feeling? Terrified, I admitted. And free. Is that weird? Not even a little bit. Listen, don't contact him. Don't respond if he calls or texts. Let him process this, let him be angry, but don't engage. Anything you say can and will be used against you in the divorce proceedings. Communicate only through me from now on. Understand? I understand. Good. And Rebecca, be proud of yourself. This took courage. After we hung up, I sat in my car in the driveway of the house I'd lived in for 6 years, the house I'd tried so hard to make into a home, and let myself cry. Not for Marcus, not for the marriage, but for the version of myself I was leaving behind. The woman who'd been so desperate to be loved that she'd accepted crumbs. The woman who'd made herself small to fit into someone else's vision of who she should be. I cried for her, and then I said goodbye to her. And then I drove to Daniel's apartment in Brooklyn, where Sarah greeted me with a fierce hug and a glass of wine and no questions, just acceptance. I was sitting on Daniel's couch, still in my navy dress, still processing what I'd done, when my phone started buzzing. Marcus. 15 missed calls in a row. Then the texts started coming. What the fuck, Rebecca? You filed for divorce? Without even talking to me. This is insane. You're being insane. We need to talk. Come home. Now. Rebecca, I'm serious. Come home and we'll work this out. You're making a huge mistake. You're going to regret this. The messages got progressively angrier, more desperate, more threatening. I showed them to Sarah, who read them with a deepening frown. He's spiraling, she said. That's good. It means you got to him. But don't respond. Don't give him anything to work with. I won't, I said. But it was hard. Because despite everything, despite all the reasons I'd filed for divorce, there was a part of me that still wanted to explain, to justify, to make him understand. That was the old Rebecca, the one who'd spent years trying to make him happy, trying to be enough. The new Rebecca knew better. The new Rebecca knew that explaining wouldn't help, that Marcus wouldn't suddenly see the error of his ways and apologize. He'd just use anything I said against me. So I turned off my phone and let Sarah make me dinner and tried to adjust to this strange new reality where I'd actually taken control of my life. At 9 p.m., there was a pounding on Daniel's door. Heavy, aggressive, sustained. Rebecca. Marcus's voice, muffled but unmistakable. I know you're in there. Open this door. Daniel was at the door immediately, looking through the peephole. It's him. Don't engage. I'm calling the police. No, I said quickly. That'll make things worse. Just let me talk to him. Through the door. I won't open it. Rebecca. Please. One conversation, and then if he doesn't leave, we call the cops. Daniel looked unhappy but nodded. He stayed close to the door, protective, as I approached. Marcus, I called through the door. You need to leave. I need to leave? You're the one who left. You're the one who filed for fucking divorce without even talking to me. I don't need to talk to you about filing for divorce. You've been having affairs for years. You've been planning to move us to Hong Kong so you could have better access to your mistress. You've made it clear our marriage means nothing to you. That's not. Jennifer means nothing. She's just a colleague. You're my wife. A wife you left sitting alone at a Christmas party. A wife you haven't touched in months. A wife whose money you've controlled and whose career you destroyed. I'm done, Marcus. We're done. You can't do this. His voice cracked, and I couldn't tell if it was genuine emotion or just rage. You can't just throw away 8 years. You threw them away, I said, and my voice was steady now, clear. Every time you chose your career over our marriage. Every time you lied about where you were and who you were with. Every time you made me feel like I was worthless, like I should be grateful you stayed with someone as ordinary as me. You threw us away. I'm just making it official. Rebecca, please. Now he did sound desperate. Come home. We'll talk about this. We'll go to therapy. We'll fix it. No, we won't. Because you don't want to fix our marriage. You want to control the narrative. You want to manage this situation so you come out looking like the victim. But I'm not playing that game anymore. You're going to regret this, he said, and now the desperation was gone, replaced by cold anger. You think you can just take half of everything I worked for? You think you can destroy my reputation and my career and walk away? I will fight you on every single thing. I will make this divorce so expensive and so painful that you'll wish you'd never filed. Then fight me, I said. But you're not going to intimidate me into backing down. And you need to leave, right now, or I'm calling the police. There was a long silence. Then Marcus's voice, low and venomous, "This isn't over." "Yes, it is," I said. "Goodbye, Marcus." We heard his footsteps retreating, then the building's exterior door slamming. Daniel waited a few minutes, then checked the peephole to make sure he was really gone. "Holy shit," Sarah said from the kitchen, where she'd been listening with her phone in hand, ready to call 911 if needed. "You were amazing." I wasn't sure about amazing. I was shaking, my adrenaline crashing, suddenly exhausted. But I'd done it. I'd stood up to him. I hadn't backed down or apologized or tried to make him feel better about the consequences of his own actions. "I need to sleep," I said. "I need to just turn off my brain for a while." "Guest room is all yours," Daniel said gently. "And Rebecca, you were amazing. Sarah's right. You stood your ground, and you didn't give him anything to use against you. That took real strength." I nodded, too tired to respond, and let Sarah guide me to the guest room. It was small and simple, nothing like the master bedroom I'd shared with Marcus, but it felt safe. Clean. Mine. I fell asleep still wearing my navy dress, too exhausted to change, and dreamed of nothing at all. The next morning, I woke up to 53 text messages, 22 missed calls, and 3 voicemails from Marcus. I deleted them all without reading or listening to them, then called Patricia. "He showed up at Daniel's apartment last night," I told her, pounding on the door, demanding I come home. "Did you let him in?" "No. I talked to him through the door, told him to leave, and he eventually did." "Good. But I'm going to file for a restraining order anyway. His behavior is escalating, and I want it documented that he's harassing you. Do not go back to the house unless you have a police escort. Understand?" "Understood." The restraining order was granted that afternoon. Marcus was ordered to stay at least 100 yards away from me, and he was barred from the house except to collect his personal belongings, which he could do only with police supervision. His response was swift and vicious. His lawyer, a shark named Richard Kellerman who specialized in high-conflict divorces, filed a counter-complaint accusing me of abandoning the marriage, of fabricating the affairs out of jealousy and mental instability, of trying to steal money I hadn't earned. He painted me as a gold digger who'd been planning this all along, who'd been manipulating Marcus for years. It was absurd. It was also exactly what Patricia had predicted. "He's going nuclear because he's scared," Patricia said when we reviewed his response. "This is actually good for us. He's emotional, making mistakes, overplaying his hand. Juries and judges don't like bullies, and he's being a bully." "It doesn't feel good," I admitted. "It feels like he's trying to gaslight everyone the way he gaslit me." "I know. But we have evidence, and evidence beats narrative. Trust the process." The process, it turned out, was grueling. There were depositions where Marcus's lawyer tried to make me seem unstable and vindictive. There were financial disclosures where every penny I'd spent in 8 years was scrutinized and questioned. There were interrogatories, hundreds of detailed questions about my marriage, my finances, my intentions, my mental health. And through it all, Marcus launched a campaign to paint himself as the victim. He told his colleagues that I'd had a breakdown, that I'd become paranoid and jealous, that he'd been trying to help me but I'd refused therapy. He told our mutual friends that I'd blindsided him with a divorce, that he'd been completely faithful and devoted and I'd thrown it all away on a whim. He told my family that I'd been seduced by another man, Daniel, presumably, and that I was trying to justify my own affair by accusing him. Some people believed him. The ones who didn't know me well, who'd only ever seen the charming version of Marcus he showed to the world. A few of our couple friends stopped returning my calls. My aunt sent me a disappointed email about the sanctity of marriage. But most people saw through it. My mother, my brother, my real friends, they knew who I was, and they knew something had been wrong in my marriage for a long time. They rallied around me, offering support and solidarity and places to stay when Daniel's guest room wasn't available. And then there was Jennifer Chen. 3 weeks after I'd filed for divorce, she called me. I almost didn't answer. I'd saved her number after our coffee shop confrontation but never expected to hear from her again. "Rebecca," she said when I picked up, her voice tight. "I need to talk to you. About Marcus." "Okay," I said carefully. "You were right. About everything. The affairs, the manipulation, the way he was using me. I didn't want to believe it, but after you showed me those messages, I started paying attention. And I saw it. The way he took credit for my work. The way he'd cancel plans at the last minute. The way he talked about you, like you were an obligation, a problem to be managed." "I'm sorry," I said, and meant it. "Don't be sorry. I should have listened to Daniel. I should have seen it myself. But I was so caught up in the fantasy of it, the idea that someone like Marcus wanted me, that I ignored all the red flags." She paused. "He tried to use me, you know. After you filed for divorce." "What do you mean?" "He came to me crying, saying you'd betrayed him, that you were trying to destroy him out of spite. He wanted me to vouch for him, to say we'd never been involved, that we were just colleagues and you were making it up." My stomach dropped. "What did you do?" "I told him to go to hell," she said flatly. "And then I went to HR with evidence of our relationship and how he'd been taking credit for my work. They launched an investigation." "Jennifer. It gets better. Or worse, depending on how you look at it. They found evidence he'd been doing it to other associates too. Not just me. He'd been systematically stealing people's ideas and passing them off as his own for years. And he'd been having inappropriate relationships with at least 2 other junior associates, using his position to manipulate them." I sat down hard, my legs suddenly weak. "Oh my God." "The firm terminated him yesterday," Jennifer said. "Immediately, with cause. Which means no severance, no recommendation, and the Hong Kong position is obviously gone. His reputation in the industry is basically destroyed. No other firm will touch him after this." This was more than I'd hoped for. More complete, more devastating. Marcus's entire career, everything he'd built, gone in an instant. "How are you doing?" I asked Jennifer. "This must have been hard for you too." "I'm embarrassed," she admitted, "and angry at myself for not seeing it sooner. But I'm also relieved. Because I could have wasted years on him, could have destroyed my own career trying to protect his. At least now I know the truth." "Thank you," I said. "For believing me. For taking action. You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did. Because you were right, women like us, we need to stop protecting men like him. We need to hold them accountable." She hesitated. "And Rebecca, I'm sorry. For my part in hurting you. I know I didn't know you were being hurt, but I still participated in your husband's betrayal. I'm sorry for that." "Apology accepted," I said softly. "And for what it's worth, I hope this doesn't damage your career. You're brilliant at what you do. You deserve to succeed on your own merits." "I think I'll be okay. My work speaks for itself, now that it's not being attributed to someone else." A pause. "Daniel told me you're working for his firm now. How's that going?" "It's good. Really good, actually. It feels like coming home." I'm glad. You deserve to be happy, Rebecca. You deserve so much more than what Marcus gave you. After we hung up, I sat in stunned silence, processing what Jennifer had told me. Marcus had been fired. His career was over. His reputation destroyed. The life he'd been building, the success he'd been chasing, all of it gone. Part of me felt satisfied, vindicated. He'd hurt me, he'd hurt Jennifer, he'd hurt countless colleagues and subordinates. He deserved to face consequences. But another part of me felt hollow. Because this wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was a man's entire life imploding, and even though he'd brought it on himself, even though he deserved it, there was something tragic about watching someone destroy themselves through their own cruelty and hubris. Or maybe I was just tired. Tired of the anger, tired of the fight, tired of giving Marcus any more of my emotional energy. I wanted to be done with him. Not just legally, but emotionally. I wanted to stop caring what happened to him, stop measuring my healing by his suffering. I wanted to just move on. The divorce proceedings dragged on for another month. Marcus, now unemployed and desperate, tried every tactic his lawyer could devise to reduce his financial obligations. He claimed poverty, despite the fact that he'd been making $400,000 a year before his termination. He tried to argue that I should get nothing because I'd refused to move to Hong Kong, conveniently ignoring that I'd filed for divorce before the move was scheduled. He even tried to claim that the house should be sold immediately and the proceeds split, not understanding that the court had already ruled that asset distribution would wait until the divorce was finalized. None of it worked. Patricia dismantled every argument with evidence and precedent, and the judge grew increasingly irritated with Marcus's lawyer's delay tactics. Finally, in early May, we reached a settlement. I got the house, or rather, I got my share of the equity when it sold. I got 3 years of alimony at $5,000 per month, enough to support myself while I rebuilt my career. I got to keep my grandmother's jewelry, the car, and half of our retirement accounts. Marcus got his personal belongings, his car, and the knowledge that he destroyed his own life through arrogance and cruelty. It wasn't everything I'd wanted. It wasn't perfect justice. But it was enough. The divorce was finalized on May 20th, almost exactly 5 months after that Christmas dinner where I'd sat alone at the table, invisible and insignificant. 5 months since a stranger named Daniel Morrison had sat down beside me and changed everything. I signed the papers in Patricia's office, my hand steady, my mind clear. And when it was done, when I was officially Rebecca Whitmore again, not Marcus's wife, just myself, I felt something shift inside my chest. Relief. Liberation. Hope. How do you feel? Patricia asked, smiling at me across her desk. Like I can finally breathe, I said. The house sold in June for $50,000 over asking. Ironic, considering Marcus would have gotten the full proceeds if he just waited, if he hadn't pushed for the quick sale. Instead, I got half the equity plus my share of the down payment we'd made years ago, and Marcus got the other half minus what he owed in legal fees. It wasn't a fortune, but combined with my alimony and my growing income from Daniel's firm, it was enough. Enough to rent a small apartment in Brooklyn. Enough to start building a life that was entirely my own. The apartment was a 1-bedroom in Park Slope, 4th floor walk-up, with old hardwood floors and a kitchen that barely fit a table. It was smaller than my closet in the Connecticut house, older, shabbier, with radiators that clanked at night and windows that stuck. I loved it completely. Because it was mine. Every piece of furniture I bought, every dish and towel and throw pillow, mine. Chosen by me, paid for with money I'd earned, arranged the way I wanted. No one to tell me the couch should be against a different wall or the art was too colorful or the space wasn't elegant enough. I painted the living room a warm coral color that Marcus would have hated. I hung vintage posters from flea markets. I bought plants, dozens of them, turning the sunny windowsills into little jungles. And slowly, room by room, choice by choice, I built a home that felt like me. The work with Daniel's firm expanded too. What had started as part-time event coordination grew into a full-time position as their director of development and events. I wasn't just planning galas anymore. I was building relationships with donors, developing long-term fundraising strategies, helping nonprofits amplify their impact. It was meaningful work, important work, and I was good at it in a way that felt effortless because I genuinely cared about what I was doing. "You're a completely different person than you were 6 months ago," Daniel observed one afternoon as we reviewed plans for the fall fundraiser. "More confident, more present, more you." I didn't realize how much I'd disappeared, I admitted. How small I'd made myself. It's like I'd been holding my breath for 8 years and finally I can exhale. "How are you doing with everything else? The divorce aftermath?" "Better than I expected, honestly. I thought I'd be more angry, I guess. Or hurt. But mostly I just feel free." "That's healthy," Daniel said. "Though you're allowed to still be angry if you need to be." "I know. And sometimes I am. But it's not consuming me anymore. I'm too busy building something new to stay focused on what I lost." Which was true, mostly. There were still hard days, moments when I'd see a couple holding hands and feel a pang of loneliness, or when I'd wonder if I'd ever be able to trust someone again. But those moments were getting fewer and farther between. I'd started therapy too, working with a counselor who specialized in recovery from emotional abuse. That's what my relationship with Marcus had been. I was learning. Not just a bad marriage, but an abusive one, coercive control, financial abuse, gaslighting, isolation. All of it done so subtly, so gradually, that I hadn't even realized it was happening. Abusers like Marcus, they're strategic, my therapist, Dr. Walsh, explained. They don't start with overt cruelty. They start by making themselves indispensable, by positioning themselves as your protector and provider. And then, bit by bit, they take away your autonomy, your career, your money, your confidence, your sense of self, until you're so dependent on them that leaving feels impossible. So what happened? What changed? You got information that reframed everything. Daniel telling you about the affair, that was the crack in the facade. And once you could see Marcus clearly, you couldn't unsee it. You couldn't go back to believing his version of reality. Do you think I would have figured it out eventually? Without Daniel's intervention? Dr. Walsh considered this. Maybe. Or maybe you would have spent another 10 years in that marriage, getting smaller and smaller, until there was nothing left of you. It's impossible to say. But what matters is that you did figure it out, and you took action. That takes courage, Rebecca. Don't discount what you did. In July, I ran into Marcus. It was completely accidental. I was at a coffee shop in Manhattan, meeting with a potential donor, and he walked in. He looked terrible. Thinner, older, wearing jeans and a rumpled button-down instead of his usual expensive suits. No job, no prospects, his entire carefully constructed image gone. He saw me the same moment I saw him. For a second, we just stared at each other across the crowded cafe. Then his face twisted into something ugly, and he started walking toward me. "Rebecca." "Marcus." I kept my voice neutral, professional. "You look good. Happy. Must be nice, destroying someone's life and just moving on." The old Rebecca would have apologized, would have tried to explain or defend or make him feel better. The new Rebecca just looked at him steadily. "I didn't destroy your life, Marcus. You did that yourself. I just stopped letting you destroy mine." "I lost everything because of you," he hissed. "My job, my career, my reputation. You lost those things because you stole other people's work and manipulated your colleagues and had multiple affairs. Those were your choices. Own them. You could have handled this privately. You didn't have to go scorched earth, didn't have to expose everything. Actually, I did. Because you would have kept doing it. You would have kept using people and hurting them and facing no consequences. Someone had to stop you." He stared at me with such hatred that for a moment I thought he might actually do something violent. But then he seemed to deflate, all the rage draining out of him at once. "I loved you," he said quietly. "At the beginning. I really did love you. Maybe you did, I said. But love isn't enough when you don't also have respect. And you never respected me, Marcus. You saw me as an accessory, a prop for the life you wanted to build. That's not love. That's ownership. So that's it. After 8 years, we just end. We ended a long time ago. We just finally made it official. He looked like he wanted to say more, but my donor arrived, a distinguished woman in her 60s who greeted me warmly. Marcus glanced between us, seeming to realize that I was here for work, that I had a life and career now that didn't involve him at all. Goodbye, Marcus, I said firmly. He left without another word, and I watched him go feeling nothing but relief that the confrontation was over. Ex-husband? My donor asked perceptively. Yes. It's complicated. It always is, she said kindly. But you handled that with real grace. Shall we talk about the fundraiser? And just like that, I moved on. Because I had work to do, a life to build, and Marcus Whitmore was just someone I used to know. Summer drifted into fall, and my life continued to expand in ways I never could have imagined during those dark years with Marcus. I reconnected with old friends I'd lost touch with during my marriage. I took a pottery class. I went on a weekend trip to Montreal with my college roommate. And in September, I went on my first date since the divorce. His name was James Chen, no relation to Jennifer. Apparently Chen is just a very common last name. He was a high school history teacher, thoughtful and funny, with none of Marcus's smooth charisma but all the substance Marcus had lacked. Daniel had introduced us at a fundraiser for an education non-profit. James volunteers with one of our partner organizations, he explained. He's good people. I think you'd like him. He was right. James and I talked for 2 hours at that fundraiser, barely noticing when the event ended around us. He asked about my work, actually listened to my answers, shared his own passion for teaching without dominating the conversation. And when he asked if he could take me to dinner sometime, I surprised myself by saying yes. The date was nice. Not earth-shattering, not a fairy-tale romance, just 2 people having a good time together. We went to a small Italian restaurant in his neighborhood, talked about books and travel and our complicated relationships with our families, and laughed more than I'd laughed in years. He walked me home and didn't try to kiss me, just said he'd had a great time and would like to see me again if I was interested. I was interested. Not because I was ready for a serious relationship. I wasn't, not yet. But because it felt good to be seen as myself, to be valued for who I was rather than what I could do for someone. It felt good to remember that not all men were like Marcus, that connection and respect and genuine affection were possible. We went on a second date, then a third. Nothing rushed, nothing pressured, just 2 people getting to know each other. How's it going with James? Daniel asked me one afternoon in October as we reviewed applications for non-profit grants. Good, I said, smiling. Really good, actually. He's kind and interesting and normal in the best possible way. Normal is underrated, Daniel agreed. After everything you went through, you deserve normal. How about you? I asked. Are you seeing anyone? He laughed. No, I'm married to this job, which is probably why I'm single. That's not sustainable, you know. You're allowed to have a life outside work. I know. I'm working on it. He paused, then added, Jennifer's doing well, by the way. She asked me to tell you. How is she? Good. She got promoted. She's heading up the firm's pro bono division now. She said that everything that happened, as awful as it was, helped her refocus on what really matters. She's using her skills to help people who need it instead of just making rich people richer. That's wonderful, I said sincerely. I'm glad something good came out of all this mess. More than something, Daniel corrected gently. You came out of it. The real you, the person you were before Marcus tried to erase her. That's not a small thing, Rebecca. He was right, of course. The woman I was now, confident, independent, purposeful, she bore little resemblance to the woman who'd sat alone at that Christmas table. That woman had been broken, diminished, almost invisible. This woman was whole. The fall gala that November was the biggest event I'd coordinated since returning to work. 300 guests, multiple major donors, a silent auction with items worth over $50,000, all benefiting environmental nonprofits working on climate change. I'd been planning it for months, and as the date approached, I felt the familiar buzz of pre-event anxiety mixed with excitement. This was my element, the work I was born to do. The night of the gala, I arrived at the venue, a beautiful historic building in Lower Manhattan with soaring ceilings and floor-to-ceiling windows, 3 hours early to oversee setup. Everything had to be perfect. And it was. The florals were stunning, all local and sustainable. The catering was impeccable. The lighting created exactly the warm, elegant atmosphere I'd envisioned. The auction items were displayed beautifully, the program printed without errors, the volunteers briefed and ready. I stood in the main room watching the final preparations, feeling a swell of pride. This was mine. I'd created this. It looks incredible, Sarah said, appearing beside me. She and Daniel had come early to help with last-minute details. You should be so proud. I am, I said simply, because I was learning that it was okay to own my successes, to acknowledge my skills without false modesty. The guests started arriving at 7. I worked the room, greeting donors, introducing people, making sure everyone felt welcome and valued. I was good at this, making connections, reading social dynamics, ensuring everyone had what they needed. And then, at 8:15, I saw him. Marcus. He was standing near the bar, wearing a suit that looked expensive but slightly worn, talking to someone I recognized as a junior partner from his old firm. My stomach dropped. What was he doing here? I made my way over to Daniel, who was chatting with a group of donors. Marcus is here, I said quietly. Daniel's head snapped around. What? How? I don't know. But he's by the bar. He's not on the guest list. I would have caught that. Daniel pulled out his phone, quickly scanning the registration. Here, he RSVP'd through someone else's invitation, Kenneth Bradford. That's a former colleague. Marcus must have convinced him to bring him as a +1. What do I do? Nothing. You don't engage with him at all. I'll have security keep an eye on him, and if he approaches you or causes any problems, they'll escort him out. But Rebecca, you don't owe him anything. Not even acknowledgement. This is your event, your success. Don't let him take that from you. I nodded, taking a deep breath. Daniel was right. I'd worked too hard, come too far, to let Marcus's presence ruin this night. I went back to work, deliberately positioning myself on the opposite side of the room from where Marcus was standing. I focused on the donors who mattered, the people who were here to support important work, not on my ex-husband and his pathetic attempt to, what? Intimidate me? Remind me he existed? The program started at 9. Speeches from the non-profit leaders we were supporting, a moving video about the impact of climate change on vulnerable communities, and then the live auction. I stood at the side of the room with the auctioneer, tracking bids, coordinating with winning bidders, making sure everything ran smoothly. And I was hyper-aware of Marcus watching me from across the room. He didn't approach, didn't try to talk to me, just stood there with his drink, his eyes following me as I moved through the space. It should have been unsettling, maybe even frightening. Instead, it just felt sad. Pathetic, even. Because this was who Marcus had always been, someone who needed to insert himself into other people's moments, who couldn't stand to be forgotten or left behind. He wasn't here because he cared about environmental causes. He was here because he couldn't bear that I was succeeding without him, that I'd built something meaningful and beautiful that had nothing to do with him. The auction raised $42,000. The gala as a whole brought in over $300,000 when you factored in ticket sales and direct donations. It was a massive success, beyond what Daniel and Sarah had hoped for, and as the evening wound down and guests started departing, people kept pulling me aside to congratulate me, to tell me it was the best fundraiser they'd attended in years. I felt like I was glowing from the inside out. And then, As I was saying goodbye to a major donor near the coat check, Marcus appeared beside me. "Rebecca," he said. "Can we talk?" The donor looked between us, sensing tension, and excused herself quickly. I turned to face Marcus, keeping my expression neutral. "There's nothing to talk about," I said. "Please. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking." I should have said no. Should have walked away, had security escort him out like Daniel had offered. But there was something in his face, not the anger or hatred from our encounter at the coffee shop, but something that looked almost like genuine remorse, that made me hesitate. 5 minutes, I said. Outside. We walked out to the building's front steps, where the November air was crisp and cold. The city hummed around us, traffic, voices, the constant pulse of New York at night. We stood there for a moment in silence, and I waited for him to speak first. "This was really impressive," he said finally, gesturing back at the building. "The event. Everything you put together. You're really talented at this." "I know," I said simply. He laughed, a short, bitter sound. "Yeah. You always were. I just didn't want to see it." "Why are you here, Marcus? Really?" He was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the street. "I've been in therapy. Court-ordered, actually, as part of my settlement with the firm. And my therapist asked me to make a list of the people I'd hurt, the relationships I'd damaged, to think about what I'd done and why. And your name was at the top of that list. Everything else, Jennifer, my colleagues, my career, that all flowed from how I treated you. The way I controlled you, diminished you, made you feel like you were nothing without me." He finally looked at me. "I'm sorry, Rebecca. I'm genuinely, truly sorry for what I did to you." I studied his face, looking for signs of manipulation, of another angle he was working. But all I saw was exhaustion and what looked like honest regret. "Okay," I said. "Okay. That's it. What do you want me to say? That I forgive you? That we can be friends now?" I shook my head. "I appreciate the apology, Marcus. I do. But it doesn't change anything. You spent 8 years systematically destroying my sense of self, and no apology can undo that damage. I'm rebuilding, and I'm getting there, but that's despite you, not because of anything you've done to make amends." "I know. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not even asking you to believe that I've changed, though I am trying. I needed you to know that I see it now. What I did. How wrong I was." "Why?" I asked. "Why does it matter if I know that?" "Because you deserved better. You always deserved better. And I need you to know that what happened wasn't your fault. You weren't too demanding, or too boring, or too anything. I was broken, and instead of fixing myself, I tried to break you too. And I'm sorry." Something in my chest loosened, a knot I hadn't even known was there. Because part of me, despite everything, despite the therapy and the divorce and the rebuilding, had still been carrying a small question. What if he was right? What if I was the problem? Hearing him say clearly, explicitly, that I wasn't, that felt important. "Thank you," I said quietly, "for saying that. For what it's worth, I'm proud of you. For leaving, for rebuilding, for doing all this." He gestured at the building again. "You're thriving, and you deserve to." "I am thriving," I agreed. "But Marcus, you need to leave now. You need to stop showing up in my life, stop watching me from across rooms, stop trying to insert yourself into my success. I need you to just let me go." "I know," he said. "I will. I just needed to say this first. To tell you I'm sorry and I see you and I'm glad you got out." "Okay. Then we're done here." I turned to go back inside, but he called after me, "Rebecca." I looked back. For what it's worth, that guy you're seeing, the teacher, he seems like a good guy. You look happy with him. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the November air. "How do you know about James?" I've checked your social media a few times. I know I shouldn't. I'm working on stopping. Marcus, that's not okay. That's not healthy, and it's not fair to me. You need to block me, delete me, stop following what I'm doing. For both our sakes. You're right. I will. I'm sorry. Stop apologizing and start doing better, I said, and this time when I walked away, he didn't call after me. Inside, Daniel was waiting in the entryway, concerned. Everything okay? Yeah, I said, surprised to find I meant it. Actually, it is. He apologized. And I think he actually meant it. Do you forgive him? I considered this. No. Not yet, maybe not ever. But I do believe he's sorry. And that's enough for me to fully close that chapter. Good, Daniel said, pulling me into a hug. Because you have so much life ahead of you, and none of it should involve Marcus Whitmore. The rest of the night was a celebration. The team went out for drinks, toasting the success of the gala, laughing and swapping stories about donor quirks and near disasters that had been averted. I felt light, unburdened, surrounded by people who valued me for who I actually was. James met me afterward, picking me up from the bar at midnight with a warm smile and a thermos of hot chocolate. I heard the event was a massive success, he said as we walked toward the subway. Tell me everything. And I did. Not just about the gala, but about seeing Marcus, about his apology, about how strange it felt to have that closure but also not need it as much as I'd thought I would. You're remarkable, James said when I finished. The way you've handled all of this, the way you've rebuilt your life. I'm in awe of you, honestly. I'm not remarkable, I said, though his words warmed me. I'm just stubborn. And tired of being unhappy. Well, whatever it is, it's working. You're one of the strongest people I've ever met. We rode the subway back to Brooklyn in comfortable silence, his hand warm around mine, and I thought about how different this felt from my relationship with Marcus. James didn't need me to be perfect or perform or make him look good. He just liked me, genuinely and simply, for who I was. It was such a small thing, being liked for yourself. But after years of trying to earn love through perfection and self-erasure, it felt revolutionary. That night, lying in my own bed in my own apartment, I felt something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Peace. Not because everything was perfect, it wasn't. I still had hard days, still wrestled with trust issues and anxiety about the future. I still sometimes woke up from nightmares about being trapped in that Connecticut house, about losing myself again. But I was free. I was building a life that mattered to me. I had work I loved, friends who supported me, the possibility of real love with someone who saw me as an equal. And Marcus? Marcus was just someone I used to know. Someone who'd hurt me badly, who taught me painful lessons about self-worth and boundaries and the difference between love and control. But he didn't define me anymore. He didn't have that power. I'd taken it back. 6 months later, I was standing in Daniel's office going over plans for the spring gala when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Rebecca Whitmore. A woman's voice, professional and crisp. Speaking. This is Amanda Reeves from Horizon Events. We're one of the largest event planning firms in the Northeast, and we've been hearing incredible things about your work. We'd like to discuss a potential opportunity with you. My heart started beating faster. Horizon Events was legendary in the industry. They did everything from major corporate galas to celebrity weddings to non-profit fundraisers. Working for them would be a dream come true. I'm listening, I said. She outlined the position, Director of Non-Profit Initiatives, overseeing a team of coordinators, working with their biggest charitable clients, a salary that made my eyes water. It was everything I could have wanted professionally. Obviously, we'd need to do formal interviews, Amanda said, but based on your recent work and the recommendations we've received, we're very interested. Would you be open to discussing this further? Absolutely, I said. Send me the details and let's set up a meeting. After I hung up, I sat in stunned silence. Daniel, who'd been pretending not to listen, grinned at me. Big opportunity, he asked. Potentially huge opportunity, I corrected. Then reality set in. Oh my God, Daniel, if I take this, I'd be leaving you guys. After everything you've done for me. Stop, he said firmly. Rebecca, you don't owe me anything. I gave you an opportunity because you're talented and I needed someone talented. You've more than repaid that by doing exceptional work. If Horizon is offering you a position, you should absolutely take it. Don't hold yourself back out of some misplaced sense of obligation. But. No buts. This is how it's supposed to work. You grow, you advance, you take on bigger challenges. I'm thrilled for you. And honestly, the fact that Horizon is recruiting someone I hired says great things about our firm's reputation. So really, you're doing me a favor. I laughed, feeling tears prick my eyes. How are you this supportive? Because I've watched you rebuild yourself from nothing, and it's been a privilege. Don't stop now. Keep rising. The interview process with Horizon was intense. 3 rounds of interviews, a presentation to their executive team, a background check. But by late May, they offered me the position officially. I gave Daniel a month's notice, more than the required 2 weeks, and spent that time training my replacement and ensuring a smooth transition. My last day at Morrison & Associates was bittersweet. I'd found myself there, remembered who I was and what I was capable of. It would always hold a special place in my heart. You're going to do amazing things, Daniel said as we shared a goodbye drink after my last day. And I expect you to poach all my best donors for your new galas. Obviously, I said, smiling. That's the whole reason I'm leaving. How are things with James? He asked. We'd become genuine friends over the past year, the kind of friendship where we could talk about real things without pretense. Really good. He asked me to move in with him. Daniel's eyebrows shot up. And I said I needed to think about it. Not because I don't want to, but because I'm finally living alone for the first time in my life, and I'm not ready to give that up yet. Maybe in a few months, after I've settled into the new job. But right now, I need to keep proving to myself that I can be independent, that I don't need someone else to make me whole. That's very healthy and mature, and I'm proud of you, Daniel said. Also, James is a lucky guy. We're lucky to have found each other, I corrected. It's mutual, which is kind of the point. That summer was a whirlwind of learning curves and new challenges. Horizon Events was a much bigger operation than Morrison & Associates, with more moving parts, bigger budgets, higher stakes. But I thrived on it. I'd found my calling, the thing I was meant to do, and I attacked it with passion and purpose. I built a team I trusted. I created systems that worked. I secured major clients and executed flawless events that generated millions for important causes. I was good at my job, and I knew it, and I didn't feel the need to diminish that knowledge anymore. In August, my mother hosted a family barbecue. It was the first time in years that all of us had gathered, me, Tom and his family, my aunt and her kids, all of us crowded into my mother's backyard like we used to when I was growing up. You look different, my mother said as we stood together at the grill, watching Tom attempt to flip burgers. Lighter, somehow. Like you're not carrying as much weight. I feel different, I admitted. Like I'm finally myself again. Or maybe myself for the first time. She squeezed my hand. I'm so proud of you, honey. For leaving, for rebuilding, for refusing to stay small. You've always been strong, but now you know it too. I learned from you, I said. Watching you start over after Dad left, build a career, create a good life for us. You showed me it was possible. Well, I'm glad something good came from that mess, she said dryly. Then, more seriously, have you heard from Marcus at all? No. Not since the gala last November. I think he's finally moved on. Good. You deserve to be free of him completely. I did hear about Marcus occasionally, through the industry grapevine. He'd moved to Chicago, taken a job at a smaller firm, significantly less prestigious than Ashford and Partners but still respectable. He was keeping his head down, reportedly doing decent work without any of his previous manipulative behavior. People said he seemed humbled, genuinely changed. I hoped it was true. Not for my sake, but for whoever came after me. I hoped he'd learned something from losing everything, hoped he'd become someone capable of treating people with basic decency. But mostly, I didn't think about him at all. He was a chapter I'd closed, a lesson I'd learned, a person I used to know. In September, a year after we'd started dating, James and I took a trip to Maine. We rented a cabin on a lake, spent our days kayaking and reading on the dock, our nights cooking simple meals and talking for hours. On our last night there, as we sat by a fire watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink, he said, "I know you said you weren't ready to move in together yet. But I want you to know, whenever you are ready, I am too. There's no rush, no pressure. I just want you to know that this is real for me. You're real for me." I leaned against him, feeling the solid warmth of his presence. It's real for me too. And I'm getting closer to ready. I just need a little more time to be sure I'm doing it because I want to, not because I'm afraid of being alone. Take all the time you need, he said. I'm not going anywhere. That was the difference, I realized. Marcus had always been pushing me toward something, marriage, moving, giving up my career, without caring if I was actually ready. James was content to let me come to decisions in my own time, trusting that if this was meant to work, it would. It was the difference between control and partnership, between ownership and love. By October, a full year after that Christmas dinner that had changed everything, I'd built a life I could barely have imagined back then. A career that fulfilled me. An apartment that felt like home. A relationship built on mutual respect and genuine affection. Friendships that sustained me. A sense of self that no one could take away. I thought sometimes about that woman sitting alone at the table, invisible and diminished, convinced she had no options. I wanted to go back and tell her that she was stronger than she knew, that she'd not only survive but thrive, that the best parts of her life were still ahead. But maybe she'd needed to sit at that table alone. Maybe she'd needed to feel that invisible, that small, that broken, before she could find the rage and determination to rebuild. Sometimes you have to break completely before you can heal properly. On the anniversary of that Christmas dinner, December 24th, I hosted a party in my apartment. Just a small gathering of the people who mattered. Daniel and Sarah, Jennifer, who'd become a genuine friend, James, my mother, Tom and his family. We ate too much food, drank too much wine, laughed until our sides hurt. And at one point, standing in my kitchen watching everyone I loved crowded into my small space, I felt overwhelmed with gratitude. Not gratitude for what I'd survived, but for what I'd built. For the second chance I'd given myself. For the courage to leave and the strength to rebuild and the wisdom to know the difference between a life that looked good and a life that actually was good. Thank you, I said suddenly, loud enough that everyone stopped talking and looked at me. I know this is cheesy, but I need to say it. Thank you all for being here, for supporting me, for seeing me when I couldn't see myself. A year ago I was in a very dark place, and now. I gestured around at my apartment, at the life I'd created. Now I'm here. And it's because of you. All of you. We just reminded you who you already were, my mother said, her eyes bright with tears. No, I said firmly. You did more than that. You gave me permission to become who I wanted to be. And I'm so grateful. Daniel raised his glass. To Rebecca. The strongest person I know, even if it took her a while to realize it. To Rebecca, everyone echoed, and we drank, and the party continued. Later, after everyone had left and James was helping me clean up, he said, "You know what I love about you." What? You turned the worst thing that ever happened to you into the catalyst for becoming your best self. You didn't just survive what Marcus did. You used it to build something better than what you had before. That's remarkable. I don't know if it's remarkable, I said. I think it's just what you do when staying broken isn't an option anymore. Well, whatever it is, I'm in awe of you. He pulled me close, And I let myself lean into him, let myself be held without losing myself. That night, lying in bed in my apartment, listening to the sounds of the city outside my window, I thought about where I'd been and where I was now. The journey from that Christmas dinner table to this moment had been painful, terrifying, exhausting. But it had also been necessary. Because that version of me, small, scared, trapped, couldn't exist in this life I'd built. This life required someone bold enough to claim space, strong enough to stand alone, wise enough to know her worth. And I'd become that person. Not despite what happened, but because of it. Because sometimes the worst betrayals teach us the most important lessons. About strength, about resilience, about what we're actually capable of when we stop making ourselves small to fit someone else's vision. I thought about that stranger who'd sat down beside me at the Christmas table, Daniel, who'd changed everything by simply telling me the truth. About Jennifer, who'd turned betrayal into solidarity. About Patricia, who'd given me the tools to fight back. About James, who showed me what healthy love looked like. About my mother, my brother, my friends who'd never stopped seeing me even when I disappeared. They'd all played a part in my survival, in my rebuilding. But in the end, the person who'd saved me was myself. I'd made the choice to leave. To fight. To refuse to accept being diminished. To rebuild on my own terms. That was my power. That was my triumph. And no one could ever take it away. If you've stayed with me through this entire story, thank you. Thank you for listening, for understanding, for maybe seeing parts of your own journey in mine. If you're in a situation like I was, if you feel invisible or trapped or like you've lost yourself, I want you to know something. You have more power than you think. You are stronger than you've been told. And the life you deserve is still possible, but only if you're brave enough to claim it. It won't be easy. It will probably be the hardest thing you ever do. But on the other side of that fear, that pain, that uncertainty, there's freedom. There's yourself, waiting to be rediscovered. And you deserve that. You deserve all of it. I'm Rebecca Whitmore, and this is the story of how I disappeared and then found myself again. How I sat alone at a Christmas table and then built a life worth celebrating. How I let a stranger's kindness change my trajectory and then did the hard work of changing myself. This is my story. And if you need to hear it, maybe it's a little bit yours too. Check the description box below for more stories like this. Stories about people who refused to stay down, who fought back, who rebuilt. Because we're all stronger than we think. We just sometimes need to hear it from someone who's been there. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. And if you're fighting your own battles right now, know that I'm rooting for you. You've got this. I promise.